So welcome to the Cheyenne Union Depot. It's home of the Depot Museum. So we are here at the Cheyenne Depot Museum, and we're going to go through and I'm going to show you some of the artifacts that they have. Susan's playing with
It says turn the handle.
with cars here to illustrate how a train goes up the grade and all that. So yeah, so cool. A lot of history because Cheyenne was influential on the parts of the Transcontinental Railroad. And we're going to see other spots today as we travel west on I-80. So this is an example of what is required for a railroad track. When they were building the Transcontinental Railroad, they didn't have the machines that they have today to build track. And so it was all done by hand. They would take the rail out by train, they'd have to unload it by hand, move it by hand, lay it by hand, put the rail down by hand. It's not as easy as they have it today to create new rail or to fix rail with the machines that they have. So the depot has changed a lot over the years. It went from what I'm showing you right there to the building that we're in today. These are some models that they built of different depots throughout the time frame. So our time zones that we have today are were created because of the railroad. And time was important on the railroad. You had to be, you had to leave on time, and they had centralized time, and so time really was affected. They had timetables, trains had to run on a certain time, and so crews had to check to make sure that their watches were on time when moving, leaving crew change points and all that. So this exhibit's really cool and how dispatch has occurred, and it's changed now because they have centralized traffic control and don't need to set their watch to a standard clock. So here at the museum they have an example of how a steam locomotive operates. So Susan is turning it, so she's acting like the steam. It's driving the piston, which then turns the wheels. Steam engines are very complex and awesome to look at and to watch run down the rails. Here are plans that Union Pacific laid out for their yard. And a ton of cool pictures and artifacts here at the museum. You could literally spend hours here looking and reading at everything. We don't have hours, so we're doing the fast tour, quote unquote, but it's still awesome to look at. This display talks about track maintenance. So once you put track in, you've got to maintain it because things do wear out. And so this kind of shows different tools and things needed to maintain the track so that way trains can operate safely. So they have a cool speeder here in the museum. This would be used by track crews to get down the railroad to do maintenance of way. So this display talks about the decline of steam and the rise of diesel. It's kind of sad to see steam go, but, in order to haul the heavy loads that are required for today's railroad, you need the diesel engines to get that done. Two main type of diesels, EMD and GE, operate on the rails today. There are some other ones that are out there as well. So they have a bell here, and Susan's gonna ring it.
I heard somebody ring it earlier. It was pretty loud. That was loud.
Yep,
Yep.
quite loud. So here's some stuff, a switch and a railroad crossing signal. And it looks like the cornerstone that they pulled out of the old building. And signal operating. So cool. And you can see out into the yard out there. We're actually going to go up onto the second floor, so we might be able to see a train. So there's a shot out into the yard here at Cheyenne. Could, if they want, sit here and watch the trains go by. There's the yard tower that we drove by on our way into the museum. Some more train artifacts donated by Richard and Betty Warner of North Judson, Indiana. So they have a model railroad exhibit here at the museum. It's a Union Central and Northern Model Railroad. Spent a lot of time on this layout. So cool, so much detail. Smith Hill, according to the guide right there. Up on a little platform. Susan standing in about the middle of the layout, and it goes from all the way over at that entrance to over there. Super cool.
It's probably the biggest one I've ever seen.
There's also a second smaller layout that's more interactive and that kids can, you know, look at and touch a little bit more than the big layout. But it's more of a modern, it's an HO scale. I think the other one is either N or S, but I'll have to look at the sign. But yeah, this is cool too. So imagine traveling by train with trunks like this for your clothing. I personally like my suitcases that roll, and would not care to travel with those. So this is a map of the Union Pacific Railroad. Sorry, I went in too fast. We are here in Cheyenne. And you can tell that the Union Pacific, before their merger with the Southern Pacific and all that, their only main east-west route was right here through southern Wyoming. So that's why this route is of so much importance. So they have several models of steam locomotives. The 4014, the middle one there, is Big Boy, and then you have the 8444. I've seen videos of both of those. Those are cool to see. So the Union Pacific is doing some switching with some auto racks down at the end there. Just a ton of history in this yard. From the Transcontinental Railroad to today. It's amazing how railroads have evolved.
Red.
They are changing.
Oh, right here. Down
So-
here.
Susan's playing with the switch right here.
Red. Yellow. Back to red. Green.
Really cool.
That's cool.
She gets excited with the little things.
I do what the kids do.
Some jet turbine engines that the UP had. Just a ton of history.
Once we get the firebox completely reassembled, all those special welded
Burlington Depot in Cheyenne, circa 1908.
So much history. Yay, go BNSF. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. Good model of Big Boy. 4004. Really cool station clock here. It was used in the depot at Elm Creek, Nebraska. Susan and I thoroughly enjoyed our visit to the Cheyenne Union Depot. I highly recommend a visit to this museum if you're ever in Cheyenne, because it's definitely worth your time and you'll learn a lot of Union Pacific history.